Coming to you from the Dietitians and Nutrition Support Dietetic Practice Group, this is the DNS Member Podcast, where we explore topics relevant to our field. From support line content to nutrition celebrity interviews and everything in between, this podcast is where DNS members can go behind the scenes and explore the driving forces behind cutting-edge nutrition support. I'm your host, Christina Rollins. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to the DNS Podcast. Today I'm thrilled to welcome a true legend in our field, Deanne Brandstetter. Deanne recently retired from Compass Group North America, where she served as Vice President of Nutrition and Wellness, responsible for developing and implementing nutrition and wellness strategy, policy, and tactics for all divisions of Compass Group, with a total of nearly 3,000 RDNs. She also just happens to be the current president of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. For those of you who have been following the DNS podcast since our launch in 2020, you'll remember that our very first guest was immediate past president and fierce advocate of nutrition support, Mary Russell. Now today, 5 years later, we're here with Deanne. Throughout her incredible career, Deanne has been a visionary leader, championing the role of nutrition in health systems across the country. Today, we'll reflect on her career journey, explore the importance of nutrition and leadership at the national level, and discuss the impact of standardizing nutrition practice across multiple hospital locations. Deanne, welcome to the DNS Podcast.
Thanks so much, Christina. I'm so delighted to be here with you.
So looking back at your career, what initially drew you to the leadership role within Compass Group North America?
Honestly, it's something I really grew into, if you will. I started with Compass Group with one of their subsidiaries, Flick International, nearly 30 years ago. And at that time, Flick International was a very small, family-owned contract food service business in the Northeast. My first day working for Flick International as their sole registered dietitian nutritionist, they announced that Rudy and Julie Flick, the owners, announced that they had sold the company to Compass Group, a British contract food service company. So I didn't even know if I had a job still. I'd been hired, and the next day they announced this acquisition, so I really didn't know if I even had a job. It's turned out to be such a wonderful career over the last 30 years. And as the company grew in the US, so did I. And that's really how I wound up in a leadership role, by learning as much as I could about the business, by volunteering for everything that I possibly could volunteer for, whether it was new account openings, trying to integrate new acquisition sectors that Compass Group bought, advocating for health and well-being initiatives. And as I grew, we grew from me being the sole dietitian to over 3,000 registered dietitians. So it just created a huge amount of opportunity. Some of it was being in the right place at the right time. Some of it was advocating for the value of nutrition services in non-traditional areas, not just in healthcare, but as part of the marketing team, in corporate wellness, supporting students in college and university dining, supporting K through 12 school meal initiatives. And in many other facets of the business, we wound up with dietitians who work in procurement, dietitians who work in data analytics, and dietitians who work in strategic projects. We even had one dietitian who went all the way to the top and became the CEO of one of our healthcare sectors.
That's amazing. And I know with all of your opportunities, I know you accomplished so many things over that 30-year period. So what would you say is the accomplishment with Compass that you're most proud of looking back?
There are so many. Obviously, growing that what turned out to be a very well-respected team of registered dietitian nutritionists. If I can talk about two, I'll talk about two though, because they're interwoven and related. The first was making sure that we had great benefits and a great career path for registered dietitians. So many dietitians, especially in clinical practice, they start out in clinical practice and they just don't see a path for growing their career. And many get burned out. They feel frustrated. What can I do? Where can I go? So we made it very clear that there is a career path and a path to advance from a salary standpoint, from a benefit standpoint. We made sure that every dietitian working for Compass Group has their CDR fee covered every year, that they have their academy membership covered, that they are funded fully for CEUs, which means that many go to FNCE every year or alternate conferences that are relevant to the area of practice that they're in. So I think that's one, making it very clear that you can advance within the company really to the highest levels. But what also came out of that, we created, that I'm really proud of, we created a grassroots RDN DEI community network. And Compass has received all kinds of awards for their work in the idea space, the diversity and inclusion, and the ability of every Compass employee to bring their authentic self to work every day. But when I looked at what was happening in the world of nutrition and dietetics, and then looked at our population of dietitians, we really weren't doing the kind of work that we should be to keep up with, honestly, the reputation that Compass had. So we created a grassroots organization with the idea of making sure that every single dietitian within Compass feels welcome, feels they can bring their authentic self to work, focused on recruiting and retaining RDNs of more diverse backgrounds, of fostering and mentoring RDNs of diverse backgrounds who are in our dietetic internship program and retaining them into the company. So really focused on that. And we grew the number of BIPOC dietitians in our internship program from about 12% to over 45% within a 5 or 6 year period. So really, really encouraging. And I'd love to talk about that accomplishment.
That is amazing. And it's a great example of, we know it's the right thing to do, but to put it in words and to show that you actually did it and you have achieved such an amazing metric in such a short period of time is really incredible. How did your work at Compass prepare you for your role as president of the Academy?
I think I had a lot of good preparation in a couple of areas. One, I've spent years advocating for RDNs, advocating and making sure people are aware of our huge and varied skill set. A lot of people in Compass weren't aware that we had training in accounting, training in economics, in all of these areas, in food safety. So we had a whole QA team, and so things like that, and this advocacy for RDNs, making sure that we were advocating for better pay, for higher salaries, for a full acknowledgement of the total skill set that RDNs bring. So I think that was one. Also, we were encouraged or pushed to be encouraged to take an active role in professional associations. So whether it was the Academy, whether it was Aspen, whether it was SHFM, the Society for Health hospitality and food service management, whatever it is, depending on your area of practice. But we were strongly encouraged. In fact, many of our RDNs were incentivized to, if they took a leadership role in an outside professional organization, they got points towards a higher salary or towards a promotion. So it made it very easy to advocate for that kind of thing. And then finally, I think the other thing I learned within Compass Group over many years is managing a variety of personalities and how to communicate not just at a scientific and technical level, which I think we have very good training in, but how to also communicate at a C-suite level. So how to communicate to a variety of people. I love to tell the story. The first presentation that I had to the Compass, the CEO that at that time of Compass and the board, I went in with my full dietitian scientific type presentation with footnotes and details. And I got 3 slides in, and the CEO said, "Could you please get to the point or sit down?" And it was very abrupt and very gruff. And I was really taken aback because I felt like I had this great presentation. But then I realized that what he was looking for were 2 slides, 3 bullet points on each one, and that was it. And so that has helped a lot with this academy role, I think, in terms of what kind of communication goes to who and when and how. So all of those things have helped me in this current role.
So as you reflect on your leadership journey, are there any other skills or a mindset that you believe to be critical to your success?
I think there are a couple. One, the whole idea of emotional intelligence and being able to take a step back and not take things personally, to really look at things critically and dive in that way. Also, the idea of perseverance. One of the things I learned very quickly is that no doesn't mean no, it means not today. And what no teaches you is to go back and think about, did I communicate this right? Did I package it right? Is the timing not right? And how can I repackage this? And at what time is it best to go back and ask for the same thing? Maybe repackaged, maybe communicated in a different way. And maybe it truly is just a matter of timing. And I found that there's many things that I could eventually advance if I use that as a learning opportunity. I think certainly we all need to do a better job at understanding finances. And whether you're working in a healthcare setting, in a public health setting, or with a not-for-profit organization, we need to understand the finances behind that organization and what drives their why to be able to be effective in our roles and to be able to advance in our roles. We need to understand that business piece of it. Certainly negotiation skills, project management skills. And then finally, the last one is always hire people to work for you who are smarter than you. And I found that this was particularly important as I transitioned out of my role at Compass Group and retired, because I had someone I'd been working with for 15 years and really making sure that she was able to grow and develop so that she was ready to be promoted into my position as I left.
Well, you've championed the idea of standardizing policies across health systems. So why is standardization so important, especially in clinical nutrition?
So I will preface this by saying it's totally not my area of expertise. I've worked a lot on standardization more in a food service setting and certainly across multiple healthcare organizations there. It's just the expectation. But so I used the old call a friend. Um, I went to one of our dietitians who works as a regional vice president in Morrison Healthcare and had a little bit of a conversation with her about the idea of standardization and clinical, really in clinical roles and clinical settings. So, you know, it's important. It ensures that evidence-based care is provided at all locations. It also ensures that there's equitable access to care so that patients in any type of healthcare setting receives the same level and standard of care. So if you have a multi-site healthcare system, that's really important that the main hospital in a more urban affluent area perhaps is delivering the same level of care as that at a satellite in a low income area. Also, I think many healthcare systems share a medical record system, which further drives the need for standardization in terminology and order sets and enteral formulary, um, and really in ordering and procurement of anything.
So, can you share an example? And it doesn't have to be specific to clinical by any means, but can you share an example where standardization made a measurable difference in outcomes or efficiency when you did look across multiple locations?
So certainly where we're doing research and quality projects, and it depends on large quantities of data that you need to extract from the medical record system. That can only happen if we have standardized methods of documenting care, of consistently agreed on terminology to describe that care, and that way we can look at outcomes measures. So, um, and essentially cost data. And really the best example that I've seen of this has been the malnutrition screening and malnutrition care initiatives. And by using that level of standardization, and this was across many healthcare systems, but looking at that, the standardized definitions, the standardized data collection, were able to really show huge benefits, both to each individual client, but then also across the board in conjunction with some of the malnutrition efforts that the Academy is doing. But the only way we were able to do that is with the standardized terminology, the standardized data collection, the standardized process that we put in place.
And how does system-wide standardization really impact the care we're providing to patients and also staff? So thinking about staff satisfaction in the mix as well.
Especially from a staff standpoint, I think staff are generally more satisfied when they have an efficient way to provide and document care. I mean, and certainly that way they can spend more time with patients, providing personalized care and attention. So it takes that guesswork away. It takes the guesswork away if you have someone moving from one unit or one location in a hospital or healthcare system to another. They don't have to learn a whole new random system. There's standardization there. So it's much quicker and easier to have the same care protocols, the same documentation standards, the same systems, the same ordering protocols, the same clinical standards that are the same. And I think patients also benefit from the consistency. It leads to a reduction in errors or a lower risk of errors. So both patients, I think, and staff benefit from standardization.
So as you step into your role as Academy President, what are your top priorities for the profession and particularly related to those of us working in clinical practice?
So if I look at clinical practice, I think, as you know, we have a new strategic plan, which is very exciting. And it's the culmination of a lot of work over the last year and a half that included not only quantitative and qualitative data, but also a tremendous amount of um, work talking to members and even non-members. So pulling all that data together, and two of the strategic areas of focus I think are particularly relevant to clinical practice right now. The first is the idea of defined identity, making sure that all healthcare providers, physicians, PAs, nurses, um, PTs, OTs, everyone working in the healthcare field is fully recognizes the skill and benefit of having RDNs included on the team and the unique benefit that they bring in terms of translating nutrition science into delicious, craveable food that patients will actually eat that benefits their health. So this defined identity is the idea that every healthcare professional, but then also every policymaker, everyone in the public, that we're better known than the non-credentialed influencer out on the street. So we have a much higher level of respect, we have a higher level of authority, and that should translate into a higher level of pay. Um, so I think that's very relevant to uh, clinical practice. The other, the other one of the strategic pillars, not that all of them aren't very important, but I think the idea of building and leveraging all partnerships. So if we look at within the healthcare world, not just the typical partnerships that we have with things like the American Heart Association or the American Diabetes Association or the Obesity Society. Yes, leveraging those, but we need to look outside that box and look at, do we need to partner with some of the worksite wellness folks that are doing amazing work in terms of looking at return on investment of every dollar invested in health promotion and the return on keeping healthy people healthy? Do we need to partner with more technology and AI entities so that we're at the forefront and it's allowing us to practice to the fullest of our potential? We're not seeing it as a barrier. So what other new partnerships do we need to be able to advance the profession? And I think, again, that's very relevant in clinical practice because we tend to kind of look at partnerships with some blinders on, depending on the area of practice that you're in. And we really need to expand and look at who else can bring value to us and those in clinical practice.
Well, Deanne, I just want to wrap up this episode with one of my favorite questions. So, what advice would you give our listeners, so our emerging dietitian leaders who want to make a lasting impact like you have in the field of nutrition and dietetics?
Probably a couple pieces of advice. One, don't be afraid to think out of the box. Anticipate the future. Read everything you can about what's coming down the pike because especially in clinical practice, I even though I'm not myself in clinical practice right now, I've spent a lot of time looking at the hospital of the future or the healthcare system of the future. And the way we practice in clinical practice today is absolutely not what's going to be going on in the future. And we need to figure out what our role is, um, how we're going to grow and advance and be at the forefront of that. We don't want to be caught on the back of our heels there. We want to be leading those initiatives. We want to be ahead of those initiatives. So I think, first of all, think out of the box, anticipate trends, embrace change, um, don't be fearful, and look for opportunities. The other thing I would say is find a mentor, and maybe a mentor out of your area of practice. If you're in clinical practice, look at someone working in technology or someone working in some other area in field. Volunteer. Um, it's easy. There's so many opportunities within the academy to just get your feet wet, depending on how much time you have. And believe me, I know I was a single parent. I had two young daughters. I felt like just going to work and managing life was a struggle at one point. So, but you can always find a way where maybe it's a couple hours a month or an hour or two a month. There's so many opportunities within the academy. Show up at an affiliate meeting, join a DPG or a MIG, or try one that is an area you don't know a lot about but might be interested in. I think there's so many different ways to volunteer and at a very small scale to get started.
Deanne, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here today. Your leadership, vision, and dedication to our profession are truly inspiring, and we're excited to see the impact you'll continue to make as Academy President.
Thanks, Christina. And I hope that we'll see all of you in Nashville for fencing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listeners, to learn more about advancing your own clinical practice and leadership skills, and to learn about all the fantastic things that DNS will have to offer at FinCE this October in Nashville, please visit our website at dnsdpg.org. Until next time, I'm Christina Rollins. Thanks for listening.